The rain had been falling all morning, drumming against the supermarket's windows like it was angry at the world. Ayana tugged her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders, shivering as a cold breeze slipped in through the front doors every time they opened. She was standing at checkout line 6, scanning groceries for a customer who wouldn't stop complaining about the prices, but she kept her head down, forcing a small, polite smile, like always. That was the job, after all. Minimum wage, maximum patience, she whispered under her breath. Ayana was 22, tired, and used to being invisible. People didn't usually look at her twice. She worked 5 days a week, barely making enough to help her mum with rent and keep the lights on. College had been a dream once, but dreams didn't pay the bills. Reality did. So she smiled, nodded, and tried to keep her spirit from cracking every time someone talked to her like she wasn't even human. Halfway through her shift, she noticed a frail-looking old man struggling to push a half-filled cart through the store. His clothes were a bit worn, brown slacks, an old coat, and a hat that had seen better days. He moved slowly, pausing every few steps like he had to catch his breath. Nobody helped him. In fact, some of the younger employees laughed behind his back. Ayana didn't laugh. She kept watching him out the corner of her eye while she bagged groceries. Something didn't sit right. Then it happened. Near the cereal aisle, the old man dropped a box. When he bent down to pick it up, a young assistant manager named Trey stepped in front of him. "Sir, you're holding up the aisle," Trey snapped, not even offering to help. "If you're not going to buy anything, maybe it's time to head out." Ayana's hands froze. The old man looked up, surprised. "I was just slowing things down," Trey cut in, smirking. "This isn't a rest stop, old man." Ayana clenched her jaw. Customers were starting to notice, whispering and staring. The old man looked humiliated, blinking like he wasn't sure what he'd done wrong. That was it. She couldn't take it. "Hey," she called, walking over before she even thought about it. "Trey, that's enough." Trey turned, annoyed. "Mind your business, Ayana." "It is my business. You don't talk to people like that." He dropped a box. "That's not a crime." The store went quiet. A few customers nodded in quiet approval, but no one else spoke up. Ayana turned to the old man and offered a soft smile. "Here, sir, let me help you." She gently picked up the cereal box and put it back in his cart. "Are you okay?" He nodded slowly, eyes wide with surprise. "Thank you, young lady." Trey rolled his eyes. "Whatever, he's just some nobody wasting time." Ayana's blood boiled. Well, this nobody still deserves respect. The old man said nothing more, but he gave Ayana a look that lingered, like he saw something in her most people missed. After he walked away, Trey pulled her aside. "You like your job?" Because mouthing off might cost it. Ayana didn't answer. She just went back to her register, heart pounding, but her conscience clear. What she didn't know, what no one in that store knew, was that the old man they all dismissed, the one Ayana had defended without hesitation, was Harold M. Lane, billionaire, founder of Lane & Sons Holdings, father of Preston Lane, the ruthless CEO who had recently bought this very supermarket chain. And Harold had come in today for one reason, to see what kind of people were working for his son. Ayana had just made an impression that would change her life. She just didn't know it yet. The next morning started like any other. Ayana stood at the bus stop, still half asleep, arms crossed against the morning chill. She didn't sleep. Much the night before, her mum had come home late from her second job with swollen feet and a blank stare that made Ayana's heart hurt. It reminded her why she worked so hard, why she couldn't afford to lose her job, no matter how humiliating. Yesterday's scene had been. Trey hadn't said anything else after the incident, but she'd felt his eyes on her the rest of the shift. He didn't like being called out, especially not by someone like her, a part-time cashier with cheap sneakers and no connections. She expected some kind of punishment, maybe fewer hours or worse. But when she walked into the store that morning, something was off. First, the break room was weirdly quiet. A couple of co-workers glanced up at her and quickly looked away, whispering. Then came the real surprise. Trey was nowhere to be seen. She clocked in and headed to her register, Ms. Denise, one of the older cashiers who'd been working there for years, leaned over as Ayana got settled. "You here?" Denise whispered. "Hear what?" Ayana asked, scanning her first item. "Trey got suspended. Upper management's here. Some suit from corporate came in early asking questions about how staff treat customers. Something about an incident yesterday." Ayana's hand paused in midair. "Wait, what?" Denise raised an eyebrow. "Girl, what did you do?" Ayana blinked. "I didn't do anything. I just stood up for someone." "Well," Denise said with a sly smile, "looks like someone important was watching." Not long after, a tall man in an expensive black coat walked into the store with two assistants trailing behind him. He didn't look like he belonged there. His shoes were too clean, his coat too crisp. He walked straight toward the front registers with purpose, scanning faces. Ayana didn't know who he was, but her stomach tightened anyway. One of the assistants whispered something, and the man turned his sharp eyes on her. "You," he said calmly, almost too calmly. "Ayana Hayes?" She straightened, feeling every eye in the store shift toward her. "Yes, sir? I'd like to speak with you, privately." Denise let out a low whistle as Ayana followed him toward the manager's office, heart pounding like a drum. This was it. She was getting fired. She just knew it. Inside the office sat a familiar figure, though cleaner now, in a suit, with polished shoes and a slight smile. It was the old man from yesterday. "Hello again, Miss Hayes," he said warmly. Ayana froze. "Oh, you. You're dressed different." The man chuckled. "Yes, I tend to do that when I'm not testing people." "Testing?" she echoed. "I'm Harold Lane. My son owns this company. I founded it decades ago. Sometimes I like to visit places quietly, see things with my own eyes. Yesterday I saw something rare." Ayana stared at him, stunned. Harold continued. "You didn't know who I was. You didn't have a reason to help me. But you did anyway. While others mocked or ignored me, you chose kindness. That matters." She could barely breathe. I just didn't think it was right how they treated you." The tall man beside him spoke up. "I'm Preston Lane. My father asked me to personally come assess this store. The young man, Trey, has been removed pending investigation. But more importantly, we want to talk to you." Ayana's legs felt like jelly. "Talk to me." Harold leaned forward. "How would you feel about a promotion?" She blinked. "Promotion? Me? But I'm just a cashier." "No," Preston said firmly. "You're the kind of person we need in management. Someone who values dignity over power." Ayana's voice trembled. "I don't have a degree. I barely finished community college. We'll handle that," Harold interrupted with a wave of his hand. "Training, courses, mentorship. If you want it, the opportunity is yours. You've already proven you're more than qualified where it matters." Ayana sat down slowly, her world tilting in ways she couldn't fully process. She had stood up for a stranger. And now that moment of courage might just rewrite her entire future. Ayana sat frozen for a few moments, trying to absorb everything Harold and Preston Lane had just said. Her mind raced. A promotion, training, from cashier to management. It didn't make sense. Not for someone like her, someone who'd always been told to stay in her place, to be thankful for what she had. No one ever came offering her opportunities. Life had never handed her anything but bills, worries, and disappointment. Still, there was something honest in Harold's eyes. He wasn't smiling like a man offering a favor. He looked more like someone offering a challenge, testing her to see if she'd dare say yes. I don't even know what to say," she finally whispered. "Say yes," Harold said gently, "and let's change your life." She looked at Preston, who was still standing beside his father, arms crossed. His face was harder to read, polished, professional, but she saw something flicker in his expression, respect, maybe curiosity, like he was trying to figure her out. "Okay," Ayana said softly. "Yes." Harold smiled, nodding. "Good. You start shadowing the assistant manager next week. We'll send someone to help with onboarding. And training. You'll be on a different pay scale starting today." Ayana's heart stuttered. "Wait, today?" Is that a problem? Preston asked. She shook her head quickly. No, not at all. It's a lot. Big changes usually are, Harold said, but you've earned this. The meeting wrapped up, and she walked out of the office in a daze. Denise was still at her register, pretending not to eavesdrop, but failing miserably. As soon as Ayanna came into view, she rushed over. Girl, you look like you just saw a ghost. What happened in there? Ayanna looked at her, eyes wide and glassy. I think I just got promoted. Denise's jaw dropped. What? I mean, not like tomorrow, manager, but they said I'll start training, and a new pay rate. Denise grabbed her shoulders. You're kidding. Ayanna shook her head. I'm not. That old man? He's the owner's father. The news spread through the store like wildfire. Whispers followed her everywhere she went. People who barely acknowledged her before suddenly wanted to talk, ask questions, offer congratulations that didn't feel entirely sincere. Some were genuinely happy for her, but others... The envy was loud in the silence. Trey's closest, Buddy Marcus muttered loud enough for her to hear. One little act and she thinks she's queen now. Ayanna didn't respond. Let them talk. By the end of the day, her life had shifted. A new uniform, a new badge, and a new weight on her shoulders. Management training started Monday, and until then, she was to observe operations closely, learning. From the assistant manager, Rita, a sharp but fair woman who didn't waste time sugarcoating things. Don't think this is just because you helped some old man, Rita told her flatly. You got eyes on you now. Everyone's watching to see if you sink or swim. Ayanna nodded. I understand. But she didn't, not really. Not yet. That night, when she got home, her mom was sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of soup, her eyes tired but still bright when she saw Ayanna walk in. You're late, baby, her mom said. Everything okay? Ayanna didn't say anything. At first, she just smiled, walked over, and dropped her bag on the table. I got promoted today, she said quietly. Her mom blinked. Promoted? At the store? Yeah, Ayanna said. Management training, and a raise, a real one. Tears filled her mother's eyes, just as they filled Ayanna's, for the first time in what felt like forever, things were looking up. But neither of them knew the storm that was brewing. Because Preston Lane, CEO, ruthless businessman, and Harold's son, had his own agenda. And Ayanna, despite all her kindness and courage, was now standing in the middle of a much bigger game. Monday came faster than Ayanna expected. She arrived early, so early the parking lot was still mostly empty. Her new uniform fit differently. It was sharper, neater, and the little management trainee tag felt heavier than it looked. She kept glancing at her reflection in the store's front window, half expecting someone to walk by and laugh, say she was pretending to be someone she wasn't. But no one laughed, not out loud anyway. Rita met her at the front entrance, clipboard in hand, eyes already scanning the floor like she could see every mistake before it happened. I hope you had your coffee, new girl, she said without looking up, because we're starting in the deep end. Ayanna followed her in silence, nerves buzzing. They walked through the aisles while Rita pointed out every little thing. Stocking. Issues, poor signage, lazy displays. It wasn't until they reached the back office that things got strange. There, sitting with a sour expression and arms folded across his chest, was Marcus. Rita sighed. Didn't think you'd show up. Marcus stood up slowly. Just here to pick up my final check. Right, Rita muttered, flipping through her papers. Still pending HR approval. You'll get it this week. He glanced at Ayanna, eyes full of something bitter. Funny how quick they toss people aside now. Guess standing up for random nobodies is worth more than loyalty. Ayanna didn't flinch. Loyalty isn't treating people like trash. You chose your side. Marcus's lip curled. You think this is a win for you? You don't know anything about Preston Lane. You think he's going to lift you up? He'll use you. You're a story to him, a headline. Once that fades, so will you. Rita stepped in. That's enough. Go wait in the break room until HR calls. Marcus pushed past Ayanna on his way out, shoulder bumping hers harder than necessary. She stood still, jaw clenched. Welcome, To management, Rita said dryly. But the warning in Marcus's words stayed with her. That afternoon, after a full shift of learning store logistics, budgets, scheduling nightmares, and navigating bitter stares from other staff, she was called to the back again. This time Preston was there. He looked tired but sharp as ever, tapping his pen on a folder with her name on it. "Take a seat," he said. She obeyed, heart pounding all over again. "I've reviewed the reports. You're adapting fast," he said. "Impressive. But I want to talk about something more delicate." Ayanna sat up straighter. "Okay?" "My father," Preston said, folding his hands. "He likes you. More than he likes most people in my company, to be honest. That's rare. But it also puts you under a certain pressure." "I didn't ask for special treatment," Ayanna said carefully. "No, you earned your place. I'm not denying that. But you need to understand something." He leaned in. "You're in a very white, very male industry. This position puts you in the crosshairs, politically, publicly, even inside this store. Some people think you're a symbol. Others think you're a threat." Ayanna felt the weight behind his words settle like bricks on her chest. "You're saying people are waiting for me to fail," she said. "I'm saying some people will make sure you do," Preston replied bluntly. "So you'd better decide now if you're here to be a hero or a survivor." Ayanna met his eyes. "Why not both?" Preston smiled faintly. "We'll see." As she left the room, her thoughts were spinning. This wasn't just about a job anymore. This was a test she didn't know she'd been walking into. And somewhere behind all of it, Preston Lane was watching. She didn't know yet if he wanted her to win, or to fall hard enough that his father would finally lose faith in someone again. Either way, Ayanna knew one thing for sure. She couldn't afford to mess this up. The days that followed felt like walking a tightrope. Ayanna woke up every morning with a knot in her stomach and went to bed every night with a dozen problems still bouncing around in her head. Inventory errors, staff complaints, scheduling conflicts. One assistant kept forgetting to follow her directions. Another rolled his eyes every time she walked by. A few customers even treated her like she didn't belong, asking to speak to someone higher when she offered help. It wasn't just the pressure, it was the quiet resistance. The way people didn't say things directly, but their tone said it all. She was an outsider in her own store. Rita, to her credit, didn't sugarcoat anything. "Some of these folks would rather quit than take orders from a young black girl who used to bag their groceries," she said bluntly one afternoon. "But you're not here to be liked. You're here to lead." Ayanna nodded, trying to hold that line in her head like armor. She kept reminding herself, "You didn't ask for this, you earned it." But the cracks were starting to show. One afternoon, after a long, messy day, she stayed late to fix an issue with the next week's schedule. She was alone in the office when she noticed an envelope on the desk. No name, just plain white. Curious, she opened it. Inside was a typed note. "You're not special. You're a pawn, and when they're done using you, you'll be back where you belong." There was no signature, no handwriting, just that one chilling message. Ayanna stared at it for a long time. Her hands trembled slightly, but she didn't cry. She just folded the note neatly, put it back in the envelope, and slid it into her bag. She told no one. The next morning, she showed up on time in full uniform and with her head held high. But something in her had changed. That same day, Harold Lane returned. He didn't call, didn't send a driver. Just walked through the front door like any other customer, wearing a simple coat and his usual quiet smile. The staff watched in silence as he made his way to Ayanna at the front. "Still standing," he said softly. "Barely," she replied, forcing a grin. He nodded. "Let's take a walk." They strolled the aisles together, the store quiet in the early hour. Ayanna told him what she'd learned, what she was struggling with. She left out the note. She didn't want to seem weak, not yet. "You know what I like about you," Harold said after a while. "You don't look for excuses. You look for answers. I don't always find them, but you try." They sat on a bench near the pharmacy, and he reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I asked my son to review your background, not to test you, just to understand you better. He said your record's clean, but you didn't. Finish college. You've had part-time jobs since you were 16, and yet you walked into this store and showed more leadership in one moment than most of our managers show in a year. She swallowed hard. I just did what felt right. That's what scares them, he said, that you didn't wait for permission. He looked at her kindly, then added, But I need to ask you something, Ayanna. She looked up. Are you willing to fight for this? Not just show up, but fight. Because people are going to try and break you, quietly, politely, through whispers and rules and rumors. It won't be fair, but it will be real. Ayanna thought of the note, of the stares, of Marcus's words, of the way Preston looked at her like she was a chess piece. I'm already fighting, she said quietly. Harold nodded. Then you're stronger than most. He stood up, patted her shoulder, and left the store just as quietly as he'd come in. But not long after, something shifted. Preston called an emergency meeting. Everyone was called in, supervisors, stockers, cashiers, and right there in front of the entire team, he made a stunning announcement. Ayanna Hayes will be acting assistant manager for the next 30 days. Effective immediately. The silence in the room was thick. Someone gasped. Someone else muttered, You've got to be kidding. Ayanna's ears rang. Preston looked around, voice firm. If anyone has a problem with that, come see me. Privately. And just like that, it was official. Ayanna hadn't just been given an opportunity now, she'd been given authority. But with it came new enemies. And someone already wanted her gone badly enough to leave threats behind. She'd just stepped into the fire. Now she had to survive it. From the moment Preston made the announcement, the air in the store turned, colder. People didn't say much, not to her face at least, but their silence screamed. A few clapped politely during the meeting, but most looked away. That same afternoon, 2 of the floor staff suddenly called out sick. One stocker requested a transfer to another location. Even Rita, the one person who had been mostly supportive, gave her a look that said, You better be ready now. Ayanna wasn't just learning how to run a store anymore. She was learning how to move through a minefield. The strange thing was, some people did start warming up to her. A couple of the younger workers, Kayla from produce, Darnell from the loading dock, asked her if she could fix their chaotic schedules. Another staff member came to her with a genuine complaint about poor ventilation in the stockroom. But every time she tried to help, something went wrong. One morning she discovered the timesheets had been accidentally deleted from the system. The next day, 3 complaints were filed anonymously accusing her of favoritism. Then the rumors started. Quiet, sly little things that crawled through the staff like poison. That she only got promoted because she flirted with the old man. That Preston had plans for her. That she'd stepped over people to get to where she was. None of it was true, but truth didn't matter. Perception did. Ayanna kept going, head down, smile firm, but inside her anger grew. She wasn't going to let them push her out. One evening, long after the store had closed, she stayed late to review employee logs. She sat at the back office computer, cross-referencing old time sheets, looking for patterns. That's when she noticed something strange. Someone had accessed the scheduling system on a day she wasn't even working. And from her login, Ayanna's blood went cold. She leaned in, digging deeper. The system recorded device IDs. Whoever made the changes had done it from a tablet registered to Marcus. Her breath caught. Marcus didn't even work there anymore, but he'd clearly logged in using her account. Meaning one thing, he had her password. She sat back slowly, staring at the screen. The sabotage wasn't random, it was personal. Just then her phone buzzed. A text, unknown number. You're digging in the wrong place. Stop before you make this worse for yourself. Ayanna stared at the message. Her hands shook, but not from fear, from fury. The next morning she went straight to Preston's office. He was on a call, but she didn't care. She walked in anyway, dropped a printed copy of the login report on his desk, and stared him straight in the eye. I'm being set up, she said. He glanced at the paper, brows furrowing. That's your login, but not my activity. Look at the device ID. That tablet belongs to Marcus. He used my account while I was off shift, and now someone is texting me threats. Preston studied her in silence, then gestured for her to close the door. He ended his call. "Do you have the messages?" he asked. She handed him the phone. He read them slowly, then nodded. "I'll handle this," he said calmly. "No offense, but handling it isn't enough," Ayana said. "Someone inside this store, maybe even more than one person, is trying to destroy me. And I want to know why." Preston leaned back in his chair. "Because you weren't supposed to survive long enough to matter. You were supposed to be a story, something my father could point to and say, 'See, look at what I did.' You were never supposed to succeed." Ayana blinked. "Then why promote me?" "Because you did more than they expected, and I want to see how far you can go, but make no mistake." He looked her in the eyes. "You're still a risk. To a lot of people, including me." Ayana stepped closer. "Then I suggest we both stop pretending this is just about a job." Preston's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted, a trace of respect. "Very well," he said. "Let's stop pretending." From that moment on, it was no longer a workplace, it was a battleground. And Ayana had just chosen to fight back. The next week, Ayana stopped playing defense. She started showing up early, earlier than anyone else. She reviewed every report, double-checked every task list, and personally oversaw the daily operations, quietly, but thoroughly. She changed her system passwords, locked her office drawer, and kept a log of everything. No more slip-ups, no more surprise mistakes. But more than anything, she started watching people, the ones who were too quiet, the ones who smiled a little too hard when something went wrong, the ones who looked away when she entered the room. And then she started making moves. The first was reassigning Kayla, the produce girl, to the front of the store. Not because she liked her, but because Kayla was loyal and sharp. Ayana needed someone watching the register logs and who was willing to report strange behavior. The second was confronting Rita, privately. "I need to know something," Ayana said one morning, cornering her in the break room. "Where do you stand?" Rita raised an eyebrow. "With who? With the ones trying to push me out, or with the ones who actually want this place to run better?" Rita sipped her coffee slowly. "I've worked here 10 years. I've seen managers come and go, most of them rich, white, and disconnected. But I've also seen what this company does to people who get too loud, too fast. I'm not going anywhere," Ayana said firmly, "and I'm not afraid." Rita stared at her a moment longer, then nodded once. "Good," she said. "Then let's clean house." From that day forward, Rita became her quiet ally. Together, they uncovered an unsettling pattern. Marcus wasn't working alone, he had help. A floor manager named Ellis had been feeding him schedules, complaints, and even store passwords in exchange for a cut of whatever settlement Marcus thought he could squeeze out of a lawsuit against the company. They were hoping Ayana would crack under pressure, get fired or snap, and then Marcus would come forward with evidence of discrimination and mismanagement. They underestimated her. One night, Ayana invited Preston to a late meeting. Just him, Rita, and herself. She laid out the evidence, printed email records, time-stamped screenshots, and even Kayla's notes on overheard conversations. Preston read through everything without saying a word. When he finished, he looked up. "You built this case yourself?" he asked. "With help," Ayana said, nodding toward Rita. He leaned back, laced his fingers together. "And what do you want me to do with it?" "Fire Ellis," Ayana said without hesitation, "and issue a company-wide policy about internal surveillance and access. Tighten everything. No one should be able to pull what they did." Preston tapped his fingers once on the table. "And Marcus? Let him file whatever lawsuit he wants," she said coolly. "We've got more than enough to bury him in court." For a second, Preston smiled, just a twitch at the corner of his mouth. "You're not what I expected," he admitted. "You're better." Ayana stood. "I don't need praise. I just need a clean store." Preston rose too. "Then it's yours." That week, Ellis was fired, quietly but decisively. Word spread like wildfire, and suddenly the whispers died down. The fake smiles faded. People got serious again. The store started running smoother. Staff showed up on time. The complaints stopped. And Ayanna? She stood taller. Even her mother noticed it one night as they sat eating dinner together. "You're different, baby," her mom said. "You're not just working anymore. You're leading." Ayanna didn't respond right away. She just nodded slowly. "I think for the first time in my life," she said quietly, "people have to see me. And not because I yelled, but because I refused to shrink." But deep down, she knew it wasn't over. Because while Ellis and Marcus had been cleared out, Preston Lane was still watching, still testing. And Harold Lane hadn't shown his face since that last conversation. Ayanna had won a battle. But the real war, the one for her future, was still waiting. The store was calm now, running, smoother than it had in months. Ayanna had earned a level of respect most never expected her to reach. The staff had quieted down, the sabotage had stopped, and customers even started asking for her by name. But despite the calm, Ayanna felt something building. It started with silence. Harold Lane hadn't visited in weeks, not a word or call. And Preston. He was acting different, less sharp, less present. He began cancelling check-ins and dodging calls. When Ayanna asked about a proposed renovation budget for the store, he brushed her off with a vague, "I'll get back to you." Something was off. One rainy afternoon, while reviewing expense reports in the office, Ayanna got a call from Harold. She hadn't heard his voice in nearly a month. "Miss Hayes," he said, voice calm but serious. "Can you meet me?" "Of course." "At the store?" "No," he said. "At Lane and Sons headquarters. Today." Within an hour, Ayanna found herself standing in a polished glass lobby downtown, under crystal lights and between people in suits who looked at her like she didn't belong. But she kept her head up. The receptionist didn't even ask for ID. "Mr. Lane is expecting you," she said with a smile. "Top floor." When the elevator doors opened, Harold was already waiting. He greeted her like an old friend and walked, her past rows of glass-walled offices, until they reached a private boardroom. "Sit," he said gently. She did. "I brought you here for the truth," Harold began. "It's time you understood why this all happened, why I was there in the store that day, why Preston is the way he is, why you matter more than you realize." Ayanna leaned in, heart ticking. Harold took a breath. "My son was born with a mind for business, but not a heart for people. That's always been our biggest difference. When he took over the company, I warned him, you can't lead if, you don't listen. He said the world only respects power." Ayanna stayed quiet, watching his every word. "I told him he needed to remember where we came from, that this empire started in one little corner store on the south side, run by my father, a black man who got spit on more than he got paid. My son forgot that, or maybe he never cared." Ayanna blinked. "So, the visit to the store was a test for him?" Harold smiled faintly. "And for you? I wanted to see how far this company had fallen, what kind of people it was hiring. You were the only one who made me feel human that day, the only one who didn't look through me. Preston didn't believe people like you existed anymore." Ayanna's voice was low. "People like me? People who stand up when it's easier to stay silent, people who don't wait for permission to do what's right." She looked away. "I thought I was just helping someone." "You were." "Doing more than that," he said. "You were proving what I've always believed. This company still has a soul, and now I want you to help me save it." Ayanna's head snapped up. "What?" Harold opened a file and slid it toward her. "I'm restructuring leadership," he said, "taking back partial control, and I want you to be the new director. Of community operations, overseeing training, ethics, and hiring practices for the entire chain. You'll be mentoring, managing, and traveling. You'll report directly to me." Ayanna stared at the paper. Her name, printed clean across the top. A salary so large it made her throat go dry. "This can't be real," she whispered. Harold's voice softened. "It's as real as what you did for me that day in the cereal aisle. And more importantly, I'm retiring soon. Preston may run the company on paper, but I want someone who understands people, not just profits, to shape its future." She felt dizzy, And him? She asked. Preston? Harold smiled, eyes tired but sharp. He'll adapt, or he'll watch you pass him. A long silence passed between them. Ayanna finally looked up, her voice strong. Then let's change this company, Mr. Lane. No, he said with a proud smile. Let's let you lead it. 2 months later, Ayanna stood in that same store where it all began, now wearing a tailored blazer, clipboard in hand, greeting new hires with a firm handshake and a calm smile. The staff didn't whisper anymore. They listened. Even Preston showed up that day, standing quietly in the back, watching, not saying much. But when their eyes met, he gave her the slightest nod, of acknowledgement, maybe even respect. Ayanna turned back to her team, her voice clear and steady. Let me tell you how we treat people in this store, she began, because I started right where you're standing. And just like that, the poor black girl who once stood up for a humiliated old man became the woman who turned a broken system into something worth believing in.